Hi guys, like many of you, I've been struggling a bit to get through the campaign as a pure minion mancer. However, this all changed when I respec'd into Skeletal Reavers, which are available from level 31, at which point the campaign became really easy. I coupled Skeletal Reavers with Raised Zombie and Vulnerability Curse, and honestly, I could just stay back, chill, everything was just dying. It was very, very easy. Bosses, super easy. And I have now finished Cruel, the Cruel campaign, while only dying maybe a couple of times throughout all of Cruel, mostly due to my own mistakes. And I'm slowly progressing through the Waystones, and honestly, so far so good, so I'm pretty confident that this build also scales pretty well into endgame. So, before we get into the build, if you'd like to see some showcases, you can look at the timestamps down below and skip to the showcases to have a look. There'll be a section at the end of the video, but for now, let's take a look at the build. So, like mentioned, the key of this build is Skeletal Reavers. Also, we use Raised Zombies as an extra bit of damage to help with clearing. And yeah, the key benefit of this build is that it's very easy and safe to play. You honestly can just stand back. You don't need to really be casting anything. You just cast your curse every few seconds. Sometimes you pop the Pain Offering or Enrage, but it's super easy. You can only just focus on kiting and running away from monsters, which is super nice. Furthermore, the build can be easily expanded with Mind Over Matter, which I'm kind of experimenting with right now. We are very close to plenty of mana nodes, and there's not a lot of casting, like mentioned in before. So there's not a lot of casting, so, you know, using your mana as a health resource with Mind Over Matter is not really that much of a problem. So again, you know, a lot of survivability that you can have by being able to use Mind Over Matter. Now, before you hit level 31, which is where you unlock Skeletal Reavers, you probably want to do something like Summon Raging Spirits with Flame Wall or some other early game builds. I personally used ED Contagion. That was kind of tricky because of the respecing into damage over time, passives, and chaos damage. So, up to you what you go with. Yeah, just something to get you up to level 31. For the items, I didn't really fill everything out. I just put the key pieces in. You obviously want to focus on level of all minion skills. So it's very cheap to get like +2 level of all minion skills in your scepter, +2 in your helmet, +1 in your amulet for a +5 total. You can pick those up really cheaply. Also, you want to be focusing plus spirit, which you can get in your scepter, in your amulet, and in your robe. Now, just to be clear, I got through the campaign with +2 levels of minion skills total. I had +2 in scepter, and then I didn't have any in helmet or in the amulet, and it was perfectly fine. So you know, it's not a requirement. It does help, though. Obviously, the higher levels, the more damage they do. So those are all the sort of key items and attributes you want to focus on, basically plus minion skills and plus spirit where you can get it. For everything else, you know, just finish off your attributes, get some extra life, get some extra resistances, stuff like that. Nothing crazy. Once you reach mapping or endgame, you probably want to try to upgrade them a bit more. So it's still relatively cheap to get +4 to level of all minion skills on the scepter and +2 on the amulet. Then you would have +8 total, 4 in the scepter, 2 in the amulet, 2 in the helmets. So that then, you know, you're really quite strong. But that's an endgame only. That's what you should be upgrading once you get to the Waystones. So let's look at the skill gems. So we begin with Summon Infernal Hound, which is basically your tank. He's just kind of knocking about, trying to take as much damage as possible. So I've given him Meat Shield, which gives him more life and less damage, because we don't really care that much about the damage. We've got Wildfire, which means that this guy just applies ignites all over the place. Just a little bit of extra damage, but, you know, we can easily switch this out. If you want your Infernal Hound to live a bit longer, you can stick like elemental resistances in here instead of Wildfire, up to you. And I've put in Culling Strike into him. Culling Strike kills monsters at, you know, like 10% health for like rares and uniques, I believe, which just means that, you know, your rares and uniques have like 10% less health as long as your Summon Infernal Hound does a little bit of damage at the end, which they do. So that's Summon Infernal Hound. Here we have Skeletal Reaver. So this is our main damage. This deals like 90% of our damage. We've given him Brutality, which gives more physical damage. We've given him Heavy Swing, which deals even more physical damage at a cost of a little bit of attack speed. And then, you know, for your third socket, you have a choice of Martial Tempo, which gives you more attack speed, or Minion Mastery, which gives you a level of supported minion skills. Basically, the trade-off is Martial Tempo is a little bit more damage, Minion Mastery is a little bit more survivability. So basically, up to you. You know, whatever you feel like. If you feel like you need more damage, go with Martial Tempo. If you need more survivability, go with Minion Mastery. Moving on, we have Raised Zombies. For those, we have given minion instability, meaning they explode, dealing some fire damage to surrounding enemies. We'll probably remove that later on in the end game, as we don't scale fire damage very much. However, in the campaign, this is very, very strong. We've got them Feeding Frenzy to deal a little bit more damage. We don't care about them taking more damage because they just die or time out anyway. And we've given them Lacerate, which means they inflict bleeding on hit, just for a little bit of extra damage as well. Those are basically, the raised zombies are basically just an extra bit of random DPS that you throw at your enemies, and a little extra bit of a distraction so enemies don't attack you. Moving on, we unlock Skeletal Cleric, I believe at level 52 or so. Those really, really help with the build as well. For those, for the two basic gems, we have more cast speed for Arcane Tempo, so they can heal and revive faster, and increased cooldown recovery rate. For Ingenuity, this allows them to revive monsters fast as well. Both very, very strong. You can, as you unlock more support gems, you can give them some more stuff as well, obviously, to make them a little bit better. But they're very, very useful. For the ratio between Reavers and Clerics, I usually try to have a couple of Clerics, at least. Obviously, you don't want to sacrifice too many Reavers, so it's a bit of a trade-off. I think a couple of Clerics is usually what you should be aiming for. If you have extra spirit for like a third one, excellent. If not, then I would just go for 2. Then we have the Vulnerability Aura, which ignores portion of the enemy's armor, which basically makes all our physical minions deal a lot more damage. For the support gems, I have Focused Curse, which means that it erupts a little bit faster, a little bit easier to land it and apply it. Then we have Ritualistic Curse, which actually makes them erupt a little bit later, so they kind of cancel each other out, but it increases the area of effect by 50%. Again, means it's much easier to cast them, especially on more monsters. Especially when mapping, this really helps to hit more monsters. And then finally, I've also given it Hex Bloom, which means that the curse spreads to enemies when they die. Again, makes it much more comfortable in the end game when you're mapping. Also, once you switch to Mind over Matter, this means you will have to cast Vulnerability a little bit less, so you not using as much mana. So, and you can use that as your resource for Mind over Matter. And finally, we have Pain Offering, which impales a skeleton to give a little bit more damage to nearby enemies. Here we have given Magnified Effect, so that it applies over a bigger area. Make sure that all your skeletons are benefiting from it, and more effect duration during through the Persistence support gem. Again, making sure it stays up a little bit longer. So how do you use those combos? For basically for campaign or / mapping just regular monsters, I begin with Vulnerability, then I cast a singular Pain Offering just to increase your DPS of everything else, and then I just wait for enemies to die, just running around, and then I start spamming Raised Zombies to get 10 zombies, and then all those monsters going around killing everything. Super, super easy. Sometimes you recast Vulnerability on mobs that don't have it. And the only thing that changes for bosses or rares is you basically start using the Enrage of the Skeletal Reavers. I don't use Enrage on regular mobs because it's not really necessary. Stuff dies fast enough. But for bosses and rares, you want to be using that Enrage because that really, really helps kill them faster. And otherwise, it's basically the same rotation, if you will. And for bosses, you likely won't have raised zombies because, there's likely not going to be that many corpses, but that's fine. Reavers will do enough damage anyway, as you can see in the showcases at the end of the video. For the tree, we basically begin with a bunch of minion nodes. So I go for raw power for the minions first. Then I pick up Path of Winter. I go here to get rapid recharge. Then I pick up all this big cluster here on the right. You pick up Gravedigger, Necrotized Flesh, Fear of Death, and Relentless Fallen. I then path to the left to pick up some more damage nodes by the Sorcerer start. Deadly Swarm plus some extra damage here. Then path up. Get Restless Dead, Growing Swarm, and Crystalline Flesh. I then path up here and to the right to pick up Regenerative Flesh. This really helps with the survivability, by the way. I feel like this one is really, really strong. Then I pick up Grip of Evil and Entropic Incarnation, and some survivability here in Chaos Res and Vile Mending. At that point, I path up to the north and pick up the Lord of Horrors up here, as well as Left Hand of Darkness, and then I go a little bit to the right to pick up Necrotic Touch, Dead Can Dance, and then finally Living Death. Once I have all this, I think I will start focusing on mana nodes. So you've got your Mind over Matter right here, Keystone. Then you've got, for example, Dependable Ward here, which, not that one, sorry. You've got the Adverse Growth, which gives you 20% of damage taken recouped as mana, which I think is going to be very, very strong and going to help to sustain that mana. And just a bunch of other mana nodes in the vicinity when I was looking at it earlier. So that's probably what I'll be going for after this tree. And anyway, this pretty much sums up what I wanted to show you. So far, I've been very happy with this build. I was really surprised of how strong it is. I've really, cleared the campaign very, very easily. Endgame is looking promising. I see loads of room to be able to scale this build. So yeah, I think it's pretty promising. I hope you like it. If you have any questions, let me know. If you tried it, let me know how you did. And now I'm just going to show you a few of the showcases I promised. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
What a pretty worm. The tail. Rise. More mana.
The second of Eldora. Bow before your king.
Americans do not bow to kings. We skin them. Submit. You are finished. Now.
Of the desert! We are the storm!
We're running out of time. End this.
Beast,
What are you doing?
go! I don't have time for this! Sands, bend to my will! Impede my enemies! Forth, damn you! The Paladin is now! All hate! We will blot out the sun! Into dust! The Mobalytics will pay! Our gift to you! The era of the Paladin is now!
Obey me.
Die! Ulasagama!
Oh no. The second is... This is not over. Not yet. Jamanra! I return you to the embrace of death! It is done.
flesh!
This fellow
Your
will be here
very
far
soul
too long.
reduced to ash. It radiates. My blood burns. Complex world!
We love to see you. Serpent bite! You will fall before us. Feel Arakali's sting! I shall crush you! Pain sharpens the mind. Arakali's wave! I will crush you, insect!
For me.
Yes, yes. Resist all you like.
This ends now. You are blind to the greater good. Sheer power. Enough of this. Inferno. I can't give up. I must save my people.
You know why we're here! It happened! It cannot be stopped!
No, I will succeed. I cannot let my efforts be in vain.
Now!
I will burn you alive. You think you can stand in my way? Now you're within my grasp. Nothing will stand in my way! I cannot allow you to interfere. I cannot let my efforts be in vain. I've had enough of you. Let me show you what true intellect looks like. No! Do not fail me